Okay, now that we've actually set up our podcast project in Audacity, there are some basic functions that you need to be able to do in order to successfully do this project. The first thing that you need to be able to do is sample music. Now, as it turns out, I've listened to my musical piece so often that I have an idea of one of the samples I'm definitely going to be sampling and actually probably using throughout the podcast. And it happens to be that it takes place at about the 46, 47 second mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually place my cursor where I know the audio is, and then I'm going to use the zoom function to zoom in to that particular spot. And what I'm going to do with that particular spot is I actually just want to see where it begins and ends. So I'm going to go ahead and listen to the part that I am hypothetically thinking about stealing. So here we go. So that's the part I actually want to hijack. It goes from approximately right here to approximately right there. So in order to actually hijack that, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to redo what I just did, I'm going to use the selector tool. I'm going to click right in front of the wave where it starts, and then I'm actually going to click and drag all the way to the end of the part that I'm about to hijack. Now, once I have unclicked, so you can see like I've let off the mouse, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to use the cut and paste function. Well, I'm actually not going to cut this. I'm only going to copy it. So in order to copy this into a new track, I'm going to hit Control-C. And as soon as I hit Control-C, you probably saw that the finger thing came up on there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place it into the timeline in the second track. Now I can place it anywhere I want in the timeline of the second track, and once I have it in the timeline of the second track, I can actually move this thing around. So I'm going to first, let's just put the cursor right there, and when I hit Control-V, the sample that I just took is right there. So that's the first function of doing a musical podcast, is you have to be able to copy and paste from one track to another, which is our way of sampling. Now the second thing that I wanted to point out was you're going to have to turn off or mute the first track if you want to preview things, because if I hit play right now, it's going to play both tracks at the same time, and they're going to interfere with each other, and it's going to sound like crap. In fact, I'm going to illustrate the point right here. And you can actually hear it's kind of getting distorted because this track is interfering with this track. So I only want to hear the middle track, so I hit the mute button and you'll see that the waves become inactive up here. Now what I'm going to do next is I want to hear this track, and once I hear this track, I'm going to teach you guys two basic functions right after it. So let's just listen to the track first. So as it turns out, what I'm going to do is I'm okay with this sample. But what I'm going to do next is I have to teach you two more functions. And the first one is how to fade in and how to fade out. Because I don't want this to start on blast mode. I actually want this to fade in over the course of like 2 or 3 seconds. And I actually want it to fade out over the course of 2 to 3 seconds. So how do you apply that effect using Audacity? Well, what you're going to do is you go to about the length that you want to have it completely at its highest volume, and you'll click in, and then I'm going to click this way. Now that I've selected this audio in the track, I can now apply what is known as the fade in effect. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to click Effects, and I'm going to scroll down, and one of the ones says fade in. When I click that, the waves on the track are going to change shape. In fact, they were fat waves before, but what you'll see is the front end of the wave will get pinched, and then it'll build its way up to the point where the volume is at its highest. So I'm going to go ahead and click fade in, and in the background, watch the waves on the track itself. And notice it got pinched. Now let's listen to how it's different now. So it's a more subtle fade in at that point. Now what I want is I want it to start fading out at approximately right here, because I was listening to it. So what I'm going to do to this side of it is I'm going to pick about right there, and I'm going to slide to the end. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing, except for I'm going to choose a different effect. The effect I'm going to pick this time is fade out. When I choose fade out, the wave will suddenly change shape, and it'll look like the opposite direction as a fade in. So it'll start as a wide wave, and then it'll be tapered and pinched down to nothing at all by the end of the sample. So I'm going to click fade out. And now what you see is the shape of the wave has changed, which tells you that the volume has gone down. Now if we listen to the whole thing as a whole, you can, so fade it in, fade out. And that is a nice clean effect. So the point of this video was to show you how to sample something by selecting a section of the music, copying it by hitting Control-C, placing your cursor into a second track, Control-V, pasting it into that track, and then applying the fade in and fade out effect. Thank you.